Hello and welcome to People of Passion, the program where we learn about the passions of interesting people. I'm your host, Josh Ellison, and today we have nutritionist Nicole Vanquaethem. All right, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I know, it's the first time having you in the studio.
Yes.
I'm glad that I could have you in. So let's just jump right into it.
Okay, let's do
You
it.
are the nutritionist, first nutritionist on the show.
Ooh.
Give me a little bit of your background. How did you get into, what got you interested in nutrition?
All right. Are you ready for this? It's kind of like a long, convoluted story because there's like a lot of different facets to it, but I'll try to, keep on a good path here so you guys can understand. But it actually kind of goes back to my childhood. Although I didn't really get into nutrition until I was an adult. So when I was in elementary school, I started experiencing like a lot of digestive issues. And of course, like I went to the doctor and all that stuff. And it was frustrating because I wasn't really getting any support or help from the medical system. And so it was honestly like years of discomfort that I was experiencing. And I won't get into the details, but it was really tough. And finally, I think I concluded that part of it was a lactose intolerance.
Okay.
Which I know sounds like really trivial, but it's kind of sad that like I couldn't even have a doctor tell me to like avoid dairy. But then into high school, things got worse and I started experiencing like daily headaches. I was also experiencing migraines from time to time, which is
Weird.
And so at first, because there is a history of migraines on my dad's side with like the females, like my aunt, my grandmother had migraines, I was like, oh, it's just genetic, right? Like it's fine. And that was also tough because like my doctor, I can remember I had to go in like probably 3 times until she actually gave me medication for my migraines because
No way.
she didn't believe me. I had to bring my mom in. I was like 18 or 19 and my mom had to literally come to the doctors with me and be like, no, like she literally can't go to like school for like a week sometimes because like she can't like function. Which
like you're lying about getting headaches.
Why would I want headaches?
Why would you lie about that?
Yeah. So like it was really frustrating. And she also told me to take Advil every day for like those more like mild daily headaches. Long story short, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but things like Advil and naproxen are actually really damaging to your gut.
The stomach lining, yeah.
And I was experiencing gut issues. So here I am already experiencing gut issues and that kind of being thrown to the side. And I remember too in high school, she said, oh, just take this pill every day. It should help with like your potential IBS symptoms. And I was like, even as like a teenager who didn't really know much about this stuff, I was like, that doesn't seem like
doesn't
a good...
seem right.
That doesn't seem right. Like I have to take this like Advil every day and this pill. I was like, so I actually didn't. But like, mind you, I was still like eating pizza like all the time at lunch and stuff, even though I was lactose intolerant.
Right.
Like, I want to be cool like my friends.
I love pizza though.
I know, I love pizza. Yeah. I was in high school. I didn't know better. I didn't know like the long-term effects of like eating all this like crappy food as someone who had like digestive issues.
Yeah.
So, I mean, live and learn, whatever. But yeah, and then into university, I actually finally saw my first holistic nutritionist.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I kind of found on my own. My doctor didn't recommend it or anything. And even though I didn't really have a budget to like see her regularly, it was interesting because she gave me like such simple tips, which impacted my health like drastically. So I went from like, hopefully this isn't like too TMI, but I went from like having like severe gas and bloating all the time to like actually feeling like a normal human and like not having migraines like once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just from like little changes to like my diet, which was, now that I look back, was like kind of pretty basic information that no one was telling me. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford to like keep seeing her. So it's not like my symptoms were just like gone.
Mm-hmm.
So really that's when I kind of got interested into nutrition because I had to do a lot of research on my own in order to kind of figure out what was going on with my body. It was like, okay, I'm feeling better, but like I'm looking at everyone else and I know that there's still something missing because I was experiencing like extreme fatigue. And I wasn't one of those university students staying up late. Like I was a grandma going to bed at like 10 and waking up at like 7. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not because I was like, pulling all-nighters. But I like literally couldn't get through like an afternoon without like needing a nap. And I like would still like get like bloated and like uncomfortable after eating like healthy foods. So I was like, what's going on here? So then I went to grad school, which is like was super high stress. And I don't know how much you know about irritable bowel syndrome, but stress and IBS don't go well together.
Oh, for sure.
So wasn't feeling super hot in grad school, which was kind of my own doing. But again, I was eating like probably the cleanest I ever had because I didn't have roommates. So I was actually like eating.
Oh, true. All the food in the fridge is yours. You don't need to worry about it. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. I'm like, wow, even now, like I'm thinking back, I'm like, I don't even think I've ate that healthy since literally grad school, which is interesting. But there was a missing piece. And that's when I saw a naturopath, and they like did food sensitivity testing on me. I got blood work done for various things, took like supplements. I can't even remember, it's so long ago. But like, I was like, wait, this is how like normal people feel? Like I literally didn't realize how crappy I was feeling all the time. Also during that time, I noticed that I had these lumps in my eyelids, which I could like literally pull my eyelids down and like see them. And it was really weird. I was home for the holidays during grad school. And so I was at my parents' house and I noticed them because I had like my eye was itchy. I think I had like an eyelash in it or something. And I was like, oh, that looks kind of weird. I should probably get that checked out. So I went to my optometrist in Tillsonburg, actually, in my hometown. And they're like, oh, like I'll refer you to a specialist close to Guelph where you're going to school. And I'm like, perfect. So I went to the specialist and they were like, it's nothing. It's probably just like an allergy to something, or like they actually told me, which really dumb now that I look back. They're like, oh, it looks like it could just be like mascara or something that got like caught in your eyelid and something formed over it. And I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it makes, I'm like, I never wear mascara. So like, why did I agree that was a good explanation? I was like, oh yes, of course.
When these professional people say, oh, it's nothing, it's probably just this, and they're shirking it off, just shrugging off your issue, it makes you feel like, oh, well, if they're not concerned, why should I be? 100%. They're probably right because they know me better than I do, apparently.
Yeah. And like, what? I don't know anything about eyes. Like I was, doing some self-exploration and research in order to support my digestive health. But in terms of eye health, like I don't know anything about eye health, right? So they told me to come back in a year so they could like dilate my pupils and stuff. But it was kind of getting close to that year mark. And I noticed that they were growing. And I was like, well, that's a little alarming. Maybe I should see if I can get in earlier. Mm-hmm. So I got in earlier, same specialist. I don't think I was in grad school at this point anymore. But anyways, I went back and had to bring my mom so she could drive me home.
Oh no. Yeah, like, you get the drops in?
Yeah, I'm like, I can't see normal. And again, she told me it was nothing. So something wasn't sitting right, and I'm pretty in tune with my body. Probably the most is now, like I'm really in tune with my body, but by then I was already kind of getting like, I was like, no, like something's not right. So I actually went back to my optometrist in Tillsonburg, my hometown, and he was like, he didn't say what he had saw, but he had recently gone to a conference, and he's like, yeah, something's not sitting right with me. Like I saw something at a conference, and I'm going to send you to London instead. So I was like, all right, cool. And now also looking back, it's crazy how like all these things you realize, like looking back, you're like, wow, like I was really just trusting doctors and stuff and didn't really know what's going on. So I went to London, St. Joseph's Hospital, and they were like, oh, what do you call it? There's like the actual eye doctor and then the like medical student. Why am I having like a brain fart right now?
Optometrist?
They weren't like optometrists. They're actually like medical doctors, but they specialize in like eyes. It's like the resident, maybe.
I gotcha.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So she's like fresh out of school or like still in school, and she's like going like, oh, it looks really lymphy. And I'm like, oh yes, lymphy. Like not
whatever
like,
that means.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, cool. Yeah, lymphy. So they did like a biopsy, and I went back, and sorry, I was going to get like really dramatic really fast. They actually told me that it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Shit, dude.
Yeah. So that was like, so at this point, I'm like eating super healthy, right? Like I'm in grad school.
Wait. So
yeah,
you're diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the last medical professional who chatted with you said, it's probably just mascara.
Literally.
Jesus.
And you can't even imagine like, well, so in that appointment, I actually almost told my mom to like not come with me to London. She's like, oh, I'll take the day off work. I'm like literally, they're probably just going to tell me I need to take like eye drops or something, or like I'm allergic to something, or like, I don't know, like it's not a big deal. And she goes, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like it's just London. Like I go to London all the time. She ended up coming with me, thank God. Cause like, imagine me just by myself, like hearing that. But my eye doctor, this old crusty man, he's great, super nice, but like he was like, oh yes, he said, yeah, you know, you're gonna need treatment and blah blah blah, and he kept going on. I still didn't click in that it was cancer. So he keeps just going on, and I'm in the room by myself because I told my mom just to stay in the waiting room, and I'm like staring at him like, what do you mean treatment? He goes, oh well, like hopefully, you know, you don't have to do chemo, but like probably radiation. I'm literally just like, wait, what do I have? Because he like never really told me. And he's like, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I was like, I think you forgot to tell me that. Yeah, I was like, I think you should have led with that. Like maybe lead with that next time so I'm not just sitting here like, what the heck? So he brought my mom in and like you can imagine my mom's rage. She was like, I'm going to call that doctor specialist in like Guelph area and like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? Like, you know, maybe leave it up to the optometrist in Tilsonburg because he has a connection and say like, you know, just so you know, like it could be this just in case you see in the future. But I'm like, let's not get carried away and start
a war.
Yeah, start a war against an eye specialist. So, I mean, that was like a huge shock, but like I was very fortunate that's very slow growing. And I was able to avoid radiation. And I've been so far able to avoid radiation and chemo to date, which is amazing because there's this like antibiotic. They did a study in like South Korea or something super random.
Okay.
Where they use this like certain antibiotic for a certain amount of weeks. And it worked on a third of the people with non-Hodgkin's, like with my weird rare case. And they said it usually works better on Europeans. And I'm like, well, maybe this is good because my whole family's European. So like, you know, maybe that's going to work in my favor. And it was crazy. I went on the antibiotics and like week 3, I remember I was at my parents' cottage. There's like huge mirror that's like in the open light. And I remember like pulling my eyelid down. I was really scared. Like I didn't like checking it often. And I was like, no, like they 100% are shrinking. Like they're shrinking. I'm like, no, I'm not going to get my hopes up.
How did that feel?
Well, I didn't know because I also was like second guessing myself. I was like, no, it's just in my head.
Right.
I was like, it's just in my head. I'm making this up. Another 3 weeks goes by. It was so obvious that they were going down. And I was like, shit, like I'm like one of the, like 1 in 3. Like those European genetics might be kicking in for me. Like this is cool. Yes. But they didn't go fully down. So that was like a little bit frustrating. So they actually like put me on a longer dose. So I was actually on antibiotics for like months at a time. And they went down. They did eventually go away, like from what we can see. But the thing with my type of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is that there's a 50% chance it'll come back. And then like that will just like continue for the rest of my life. So it did kind of come back at one point and then they hit it again with antibiotics. And since then it hasn't come back physically that we can see, but they also don't want to do like all these MRIs and testing all the time because that can also cause cancer. So like I'll never really know if I'm in remission, if I'm cured, or if it's still there. But it's so slow growing that like I can't, like it's not going to like impact my day-to-day life, if that makes sense. But it's the mental game that's really challenging. And during that whole process, I remember being, obviously it was stressful.
Yeah, no kidding.
Obviously. But I remember being so grateful that it was what it was and that it was slow growing and that it was manageable. And I also remember being so thankful that I had just finished my nutrition schooling because, which is kind of like interesting timing. I literally launched my business probably like a month before I got diagnosed. Yeah, interesting timing. Little woo. I know.
There,
I'm like, But I was like, how many people are going through, not just like whether it's cancer treatments, it could be any other like chronic disease or illness, and like don't have the tools in order to support their body. So I know that antibiotics can be so detrimental to your gut health, especially as someone who has gut health issues. And I was seeing the negative effects of that. And I remember being like, wow, I'm so fortunate that I like know how to take care of my body through this. It's not going to be easy. It's still a challenge. My health isn't perfect, but how many more people could be like, you know, their symptoms could be helped or managed if they just like knew how to eat properly. Like going into the cancer center in London at Victoria Hospital, and I'm not judging, but they serve like sugary cookies and like pop and stuff like that. And I get it. Like there's budgets and like, I'm not going to get into like the politics of that. Mm-hmm. I'm not judging people that to eat those foods. I'm like the least judgmental person when it comes to food. Right. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, there's like a huge like gap here. So that at first I was like, I shouldn't be a nutritionist. Like what kind of nutritionist has cancer and like irritable bowel syndrome? And like, I felt like garbage, like physically and mentally. And I was like, I'm just like contradicting myself. And I felt like really low. So I was like honestly scared to take on clients because I had this like internal dialogue going on, which now I look back and I know is silly. Mm-hmm. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, no, I think I was honestly meant to go through these experiences so that I could actually help other people. And now that I work with clients, I love seeing that progress, you know. So I like to focus on people with digestive health issues because that's kind of like my passion. But it's like simple things, you know, maybe supplements for a short period of time, just changing like foods that they're eating, you know, their mentality, their like how they manage stress can make such a big impact on their life. And like that's kind of where that passion started. I know that was like a long kind of journey, but I think it's important because at first I didn't want to share that side of like my health journey because I was really nervous that people would judge me as a nutritionist. Like, really? Like you're a nutritionist and you still got cancer and have these like digestive issues. But I think those experiences actually make me more relatable to my clients. And I know what it feels like to be on the other side of it and how frustrating it can be. So I just really want to help people, you know, the ones I've like gone to the doctor multiple times and they're like, oh, you know, like just take this pill, like you'll be fine. Or like, oh yeah, you know, just take this like migraine medication for the rest of your life instead of getting to the root cause. So that's kind of where that started. Yeah. Started since I was a kid is where I'm getting at.
Right. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really interesting. Well, because before we went live, we were chatting about like how the universe is a little woo-woo.
It is
like,
woo-woo.
If you realize that things are happening to you for a reason, then it, you know, things just kind of make sense.
Yes.
I think it's really fascinating that you went through that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the way that antibiotics interfere with the gut biome and presumably, well, because you're treating the gut biome as a nutritionist, right?
Yes.
So like everybody's taken antibiotics at one point. Mm-hmm. Are there any symptoms that we should be aware of, you know, to let us know that something's going on in the gut?
The crazy part is that, I mean, I think not everyone, but most people have been on antibiotics at some point in their life. A lot of times when we're kids, you know, because we have like, you know, different infections and throat infections and like all of that stuff. I think I was on antibiotics like so many times for like tonsillitis, like super cool. But like doctors just like hand that out. They're like, oh yeah, tonsillitis, here you go. So that probably didn't also help my gut health issues as a kid. The thing is that people can take antibiotics and not experience any like outward symptoms. So like there could be bad things going on in your gut and it could be impacting your healthy gut bacteria and you might not know. Some of the things that you might notice could be really subtle too, right? It could be like maybe changes in your bowel movements, could be changes in like things just like gas and bloating. So it's not necessarily like you're going to experience like anything like crazy obvious. I mean, some people might experience it a lot more if they've been on like a long course of antibiotics and they already have some underlying gut issues. Like, you know, someone like myself, it's a little bit more apparent. But yeah, like probably like the average person might not realize, you know, what's kind of going on in their gut.
So when somebody comes to you and they say, I have bloating or there's changes in my bowel movements, take me through how you would assess them and figure out what's going on.
Okay, so whether or not they like it, they have to fill out the longest client intake form of life. So I'm like, I want to know everything because people don't realize how much like what they're eating, their lifestyle can impact their gut health. So I go through like the obvious things like how often are you like bloated, like gassy? When does it happen? Is it after meals, morning, night? I know it sounds like really detailed, but it's all helpful for me to know. I get into the nitty gritty, like tell me about your bowel movements. Like, what do they look like?
How's it smell?
How does it smell? Literally, people are like, do I have to answer this? And I'm like, you have to answer. Like, I need to know. Like, I'm
Is that something that you check on yourself like daily or weekly?
Oh my gosh, yes. Any nutritionist.
I thought I was the only one.
Okay, any nutritionist literally loves talking about poop. Like from the people at least I know that are nutritionists, it's like, we love talking about poop. We love checking our own poop. It's like a weird thing. Also didn't help I grew up with brothers, like daily conversation at the dinner table. Like, I had a good poop today. You? Yeah. Like, but I have to realize that like most people don't grow up with like weird older brothers. So I have to kind of get people comfortable with talking about those things. Other things that I check are like stress is huge, that mind-gut connection, sleep, how much they're moving, what they're actually eating. Maybe they actually have food sensitivities or other triggers. And then that process that I go through with them, it can vary quite greatly depending on the individual. I don't have like a go-to protocol per se.
Okay.
So I can do you want me to take like someone like with a classic like kind of gas bloating, like mild digestive issues? Like,
yeah.
So I'll make like a avatar client. So they have some gas and bloating after meals, and they feel a little sluggish after meals, maybe slightly constipated, like they're not going to the bathroom like super regularly, a little fatigued, stressed, which is like pretty much everyone.
Everybody.
Every single person,
yeah,
including myself. But what I would recommend is first we always look at their diet. Like, are they eating things like processed foods that might actually be triggering their symptoms? Are they eating a lot of like beans and grains, which can be really hard on your digestive system if you're having issues with digestive health? Like, I'm not saying to never eat those things. They're great, but like you might have to lay off of them for a little while. Or how are you preparing them? Are you soaking your beans and your grains before you like cook them and eat them? That can make a big difference. Another big one, are they chewing their food? Like, I know that sounds...
Chewing the food as
chewing
opposed
the
to
food, inhaling it. Which like, okay.
I inhale my food.
I'm also still bad at it. Like, it's one of those things that I have to work on quite a bit. So it's called like mindful eating. So essentially not eating with like your phone in front of you or like in front of the TV and actually like chewing your food until it's complete mush. And it's so hard. Like, I'm not just saying like, oh, just chew your food more.
I heard like 50 times. You're supposed to chew 50 times.
Yeah, it's about like 35 to like 50 depending on like the type of food. So like a steak, obviously you're going to chew more than like a potato, right? But it can be really hard because what happens is our jaw muscles aren't used to it. So like I have clients and I'm like, just choose one food on your plate per meal that you're going to do that with, because you'll literally get a sore jaw when you're not used to it. And also our esophagus is used to opening up like it after a certain amount of bites. So like, let's say the average number of bites is like 6 to 10. That person's esophagus is going to open up thinking it's about to swallow. So if you're all of a sudden chewing like 45 bites, your esophagus, you're like trying not to like swallow your food. It's really difficult. So you have to retrain those muscles not to like automatically swallow the food. It's crazy. But like that can honestly make such a big difference in someone who has digestive issues. They're like, wow, I just chewed my food more and I feel better. Other things like, I mean, there's so many different supplements. Probiotic is like a good go-to for like every person really on this planet, because we're exposed to so much in terms of like infection, toxins, the food that we eat, right? So, I mean, everyone can generally benefit from some probiotic, or even fermented foods can be really helpful, like sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, kefir. Certain supplements like glutamine can be really really good for like soothing your digestive tract. Magnesium is amazing for like almost anyone. And it's also good for like stress and sleep and muscles. So that's like one of my favorite supplements. Digestive enzymes. So if you have issues with breaking down food and like you're feeling like really bloated and gassy after meals, you might want to try taking one right before you eat each meal and see if that kind of helps those symptoms.
I take lactase when I eat cheese, but it doesn't always work. Is there...
Okay, so in terms of like, is it like that? It's been so long because I have like a lactose intolerance, and I remember I would take, it was...
Yeah, there's like little pills, yeah.
I would actually feel worse after taking them, and I don't know why.
Honestly, I feel like I take like 3 pills. They say max 3 per meal.
You're like, I'm taking 5.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Well, Jess and I have like Pizza Friday sometimes, and we get pizza either, we get like lactose-free cheese. Or we'll get regular pizza with regular cheese.
Yeah.
But either way, I'll take these pills, and it doesn't really seem to affect that much. I still get super bloaty and gassy, even with this lactase digestive enzyme.
Right. You might need something a little bit more powerful,
Stronger.
Or you might need to also avoid dairy.
Avoid dairy?
Really, the root cause is that you probably need to avoid dairy is what that is.
Yeah,
but I don't want to also tell you to never have dairy again, because that's just a sad life to live.
Right.
So I can hook you up with some maybe different digestive enzymes that are good, some different
try
brands.
Some things out.
But yeah, it's tricky. It depends on the person, right? Like I have some clients who like don't even react well to a probiotic. So, I mean, there is cases, like it's common for people to almost go through this reaction for the first week or two. If like all of a sudden they're taking a probiotic and they've never done that before, it can almost create like...
I've heard about that. Yeah, I started taking probiotics and I got crampy.
Yeah, it can almost exacerbate everything. And it should eventually stop doing that, but it can obviously be a little alarming when you're like...
I stopped taking it because I was like, this makes me feel worse. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a matter of also just switching to a different like brand.
Okay.
Or starting out slow. So that even goes with like fermented foods.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't tell clients to start eating like sauerkraut like at every meal when they are like starting a protocol. Like start with like a little bit for one meal and slowly add on, because you will probably experience some changes in bowel movements, or like, have that cramping because your body's not used to it. It's like, whoa, what is all this good healthy bacteria doing? Like panic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your case, maybe it's like a different brand, or you just have to like kind of wait it out, or start with even like a lower dose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else I was do for clients. Sleep. A lot of clients are like, yeah, I only sleep like 5 to 6 hours, and you need to sleep in order for your digestive system to like rest and repair.
Sleep is so important.
It's so important
it's
for like
number one.
Everything.
Sleep and water. Honestly, I don't drink enough water.
Yes. Hydration. Yeah, that's like another. Like usually in week 1, it's like your one task is to drink more water, because you need to like hydrate your colon in order to also promote like healthy bowel movements. Exercise, and I'm not saying like you have to do like intense exercise 7 days a week, but like moving, just even movement every day is really good for stimulating like healthy bowel movements, because we're always like we're sitting, we're cramped up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even not wearing like super tight fitting clothing can be helpful for someone with digestive issues.
Walk around naked.
Yeah, just walk around naked. That's what I'm prescribing. In your own house. But yeah, like there's so many different lifestyle things. Like everyone's like, oh, like nutrition, like I just have to change the way I eat. But it's sometimes the biggest issues are actually the lifestyle things that people are doing.
Oh, for sure. I was a personal trainer for a time.
Yeah.
And like when people come in, they're like, I'm not losing weight, or I'm not getting bulky muscle wise. And it's like, how are you sleeping? How are you drinking? How much alcohol are you having? How often you have sugar?
Yeah. And like sometimes too, it's like they don't realize how much sugar is in foods.
Oh yeah.
So like I'm not like judging, because you might think that you're not eating that much sugar because you're not like outwardly eating like cookies all the time or candy. But
those
like
little fruit cups. There's it's fruit. It's got to be healthy, but there's so much sugar in those.
The marketing, right?
Oh my
it's
God.
Like I don't blame people for thinking that they're eating healthy, because marketing is like so well done. Like I always use like the Nature Valley bar example, which is funny because my husband like crushes those all the time. They're like chocolate bars. But they're like, oh, this person's like hiking and the box is green and it says nature. So like, yeah, I'm going to get the Nature Valley over like the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
But they're actually probably worse than like your
for sure
classic like Quaker Oat chocolate chip one. They're like this. I actually think they are worse. So that's kind of an issue. And like, again, I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I want to make that really clear, just because most people aren't educated on that. Like we're not in high school or elementary school being like, this is a good type of granola bar and this is a bad one.
Oh yeah.
Like how are you supposed to know these things?
Honestly, so my grandma gave me a cookbook.
Okay.
And Jess was going through it because Jess is taking nutrition courses as well. And so she's going through it, and like my grandma wrote, I can't remember what the phrase was, but it was like, now that I know that like oats are healthy, I can stick oats in everything, or something like that. But like every recipe was sugar, butter, lard, eggs.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Flour. And that was it. It was all just like
different ratios.
Simple sugars of, it was like all the cookies and pies and everything was butter and sugar and flour. And that's everything in there. But like she made a note saying like, this is all healthy food. But like what they thought, like she was making this casserole and it was like a can of this, a can of that, a can of that. And it's like, it's a healthy meal because it's got all the food groups. But it's like what people think is healthy is often not.
Yeah.
People don't know what's healthy. Like the food pyramid.
Yes. Oh gosh.
Is not healthy at all.
Oh my gosh. Or the old Canada like food guide. The one that was like the rainbow. It was like you should have like certain amount of like slice. It had like a white loaf of bread on it. And I was like, I'm not saying to never ever eat those foods in your life, but like as like a daily requirement, maybe don't crush like multiple slices of like white Dempster's bread.
Yeah. Wonder bread.
Yeah.
It makes me think like all conspiracy theory because I watched this documentary on Netflix, What the Health, and they're talking about how like the beef industry pays the Heart and Stroke Foundation to suggest beef as like food to eat when you have cancer or whatever.
Right.
But then like the studies showed that like those who eat more meat like get cancer than those who eat less meat. And not making an argument for veganism, vegetarian, but it's like the company that makes the food that statistically makes cancer worse is pushing that food to cancer patients. And it's like this whole industry. And so like, who do we go to trust the information we're getting? You went to doctors and they said, it's probably just mascara. It's like, it took like 3 people for you to go to find out, oh, I've got cancer. That's what this is.
Oh, not mascara. So weird. Yeah.
And it's either like a conspiracy or something else.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with our broken food system. So actually, interestingly enough, I mean, I grew up on a farm, not like an animal farm or like really anything where you could like eat the vegetables. It's mostly like cash crops. But like I still grew up like my dad, like I think he still grows beans. This is bad that I don't know this. He grew carrots at one time, garlic. But I've always been surrounded by like food. It's always been a big part of my life just because of how I grew up. In university, actually, I did global studies and I thought I was going to like work for the UN in like Switzerland or something. Then I traveled a few times and realized that life wasn't for me. But I started studying local food systems. And I actually managed a local food hub in Southwestern Ontario at one point. And in grad school, that's what a lot of my research was around, was local food systems. And it's like, so I think I have an interesting lens because I actually had like an insider look at like the agricultural system and the food system. Being in the farming community, I've worked in agri-services, like chemical companies, seed companies. But I also have like seen the other side of it, like looking at like local food from a different lens. And also the nutrition piece. And it's crazy because I think there's a lot of controversy around like the new Canada Food Guide, which came out in 2019, because they started like suggesting more like plant-based foods. And I'm not like vegan. I'm not like, I don't prescribe to any type of like quote unquote diet. I think all those foods can play a role in like a healthy diet, like animal-based products, plant-based products, but the different like associations, I guess there's a lot of controversy because things like, the Dairy Farmers Association, I think that's like their actual name, would actually pay into the Canada Food Guide. So that's why you were getting things like you should drink certain cups of like milk a day for strong bones. So that happens in Canada. I know in What the Health, I think it's an American-based movie. But that actually does. Like, that's not like a hidden thing. Like, it's not like in Canada, it's like secretive. Like, I think that information's out there that these different boards and associations pay into the food guide. So yeah, when this new one came out, like there was like a lot of like uproar from these other like agricultural associations because they're like, what do you mean? Like, why is there like less meat on there and like dairy and blah, blah, blah. And like, why is there more plant-based stuff, right? So it's a whole political thing. It is not like black and white. Like, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things going into like the food we eat, the information we see, like it's insane.
Tell me more about, misconceptions that people might have about what they should eat, or other like controversies within the field, because people don't really know what's going on there.
Oh my gosh, that is like could be a 5-hour podcast.
We'll have you back in.
Yeah. Well, it'll be like a weekly series on controversies in agriculture and nutrition. I should actually have like my brother come in sometime because they're farmers, and it's interesting because that whole like GMO thing, that's really, that's a huge marketing. I mean, like these companies are smart. Like I'll give them that. Like they know how to like play to their audience and like use scare tactics and all that. And there isn't a ton of conclusive evidence that like GMOs, like we don't know the long-term effects yet, right? Like it's one of those things. I'm not saying they're good or bad. We
don't know.
We don't know. So I kind of find things like that interesting. And I talked to like my dad, my brothers, and they're like, I don't think people realize like how little GMO stuff is grown in the area. Because, for example, my dad's like, well, I can't grow GMO corn. And he's like a huge cash crop farmer. He's like, I can't do that because the markets won't buy it from me because of this whole like non-GMO like thing. He's like, so everyone probably thinks I'm like growing all this like GMO stuff. And he's like, I kind of wish I would, because it would use a lot less pesticides and chemicals and water in order to grow my crops.
Well, that's a huge thing too.
Yeah.
Like the materials it takes and the land to grow food is ridiculous. And it's like, what do we want? Choose the lesser of two evils. Using a lot more water and a lot of pesticides on these plants.
Yes.
Or modifying them so that we don't need to put pesticides in our food.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so it's interesting because people just think it's like a simple solution. Same with like organic farming. I know it's not as great as people think. There's also still chemicals that are used in organic farming that are allowed and certified that also aren't good for your body. I'm not saying they're better, or like I'm not saying they're worse than like non-organic foods, but like people just also aren't aware that that's also an issue. Or farmers that can like sneak some of their non-organic food into their organic. I've had people say, well, why doesn't your family just grow organic? I was like, so you have to take thousands of acres of land, let it sit fallow. Like they don't realize like the costs associated with that. Like it's not as simple as people realize. And I wish it was. They probably wish it was too. But it's just not how farming works, which is unfortunate, but like it's just the reality of it. So yeah, I've had people be like, you must eat all organic. And I was like, also, no, I can't afford that all the time. Like
Organic's
it comes
expensive.
from like a place of privilege. And that's another huge thing that I like to stress to people is like, whether it's like packaged food products, organic food, trendy health products, like sure, those things are great, but you have to come from a place where you can like afford those. And then people get shamed for not eating organic. But those people are coming from a place of privilege.
Oh, for sure. I was reading this paper about food deserts.
Yes.
Where the closest food sources is McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, to these unfortunate individuals. Grocery stores are too far away.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge issue.
Absolutely. Like, can you blame a low-income family who has multiple kids? Like, they could go to McDonald's on and have coupons and like feed their whole family for pretty cheap, opposed to going to the grocery store, which is not close. So they're going to have to get on a bus, right? And maybe go quite a distance, assuming that they have a bus pass that they can pay for. And then buy all these ingredients like individually. And I know that healthy eating can be done in an affordable way, but that's like an affordable way for a middle-class family. That's not an affordable way for like a low-income family. So I want to make that clear too, because I don't think it's fair to just be like, oh, like eating healthy is like affordable. Like all you have to do is buy like all these organic vegetables that are like $2 to $3 more and like grass-fed beef. Like I think it'd be amazing if we could all eat like that, but that's not the reality for a good chunk of our population.
So I want to get into, off the top of your head,
yeah,
things that people can start including into their diets daily that's easy to make and affordable.
Yeah.
Like eating more sauerkraut,
Yes.
simple things that everybody can start doing to start making small incremental changes in their diet.
Yeah. And I like to do things that, again, aren't like necessarily super expensive. Like I'm not gonna like sit here and be like, you should get this cool like superfood powder, which like, I mean, they have benefits, don't get me wrong, but like you don't have to do those to be healthy. The first one you can do is like, honestly, just drink more water. Crazy thought.
Mm-hmm.
Another one you can do is, you can incorporate fermented foods into your diet. Some of them can be a little bit more pricey in like grocery stores. Like if you're getting sauerkraut in a jar, it can be a little bit more expensive, but these are things you can also make from home, which is really cool. So just like go on YouTube or like Google like how to make sauerkraut, and you can like save a ton of money that way. Same with like kefir and like other fermented foods. Like that's a good way to like.
I tried kefir.
Yeah, you're like doing like.
I didn't like it. No,
it's instant acquired. Like fermented foods are acquired taste too, right? So I'm not going to say like you have to eat sauerkraut every day to be healthy.
I love sauerkraut.
Me too.
I hate kefir.
Okay, yeah, I love sauerkraut. I don't do well with kimchi. It's a little too.
No, I don't think I've ever tried kimchi.
Just try.
Try it.
You're gonna be like, curse you, Nicole. Other things that you can do that are simple are just switching from like, refined grains to like whole grains. So, buying brown rice, like full, like whole oats instead of like processed, like quick oats that have like the added sugar and like flavors. And I know like I'm saying this sounds like really simple. It might not be as simple to you if you've like eaten this a certain way forever,
right.
Of course. Switching from like white, like wheat flour pasta to something that's, again, more of like a whole grain pasta. Maybe if you have a gluten sensitivity, you could do like a brown rice pasta or quinoa pasta. Those ones are still a little bit cheaper than some of the other like healthy quote unquote pastas.
Is it just me, or are more people becoming gluten sensitive?
I think it's definitely.
Or is it awareness that's growing?
I think it's a little bit of both, because again, like think of someone like myself that had years of like digestive discomfort and was like, I don't know what's going on with my body. Like, right? Like I knew I was lactose intolerant, but like that was about it. So I was made aware that gluten was probably one of the issues. But this can kind of go in with that topic about like controversies or like you can be celiac where you're like actually like allergic to gluten. So like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about gluten sensitivity, which typically comes out in the form of like, maybe skin irritation, that gas, that bloating, mild reaction. Everyone's like, oh, I'm gluten sensitive. And they probably are. But that's usually like all these food sensitivities are typically a result of poor gut health, actually. So that would make sense, since all of there's so much estrogen in everything that we're eating, and that's an issue. So like all the processed foods that we've been having shoved in our face over the past few decades, are now disrupting the balance in the gut biome, which is making people lactose and gluten sensitive. Yes. So I think like a little bit of this awareness, just because that research and stuff wasn't out there. Like, I mean, it was maybe, but just not as, like, we have the internet now, right?
Yeah.
Like you can literally find out like all this information. And now there's like food sensitivity testing, which isn't super sound results, but it can be enlightening. But yeah, like we're damaging our gut because we're like taking in all these like toxins, like on our food, on the products that we use, right? Like everything you put on your skin is getting absorbed into your bloodstream and has to go through your liver. Like your liver is getting like overworked. So like your gut health is going to suffer. And then that's when people start experiencing like all these multiple food sensitivities, which I get because I went through that as well. So yeah, when people kind of come to me and they're like, oh, I'm sensitive to gluten and dairy and like almonds and like eggs and like so on and so on. I'm like, don't worry. You're probably not going to be sensitive to those things for the rest of your life if you work on rebalancing like your gut health and supporting it. And then hopefully you can actually include those foods back into your diet.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you know about fasting?
Oh, like intermittent fasting?
Yeah, or fasting, like 3-day I've been doing some research into prolonged fasting
Yeah.
and the benefits it can have. I read this book called Lifespan by David Sinclair. He's like a life health. He's 50 something and he looks like he's 30. And he's like a professional, healthy person.
He's one of those like healthy people that's professional.
He says 20% of your life you should not eat. That's not like 20% of your day. It's like in a week, 20% of the days in the week you should not eat. Or so like 1 day or 2 days a week you should fast. But anyway, like what do you know about fasting and how that can benefit the gut biome?
Yeah.
What's your opinion there?
So it's like a little bit mixed, like the long like fasting that you're talking about. Like there has been research to say that it can be beneficial, but there's also research to say that it could be detrimental to your health. So it's one of those things that like you have to look at the individual person. And I always say that for like whether it's intermittent fasting, keto, paleo, I'm probably like missing like even veganism. I know veganism is like a lifestyle and there's like ethical reasons behind it, but not all these diets are meant for every single person. We all have different physiology and that needs to be taken into account. But generally speaking, like I'm not super familiar with like the long fasts, so I'm not going to like pretend I know much about those. But in terms of like a shorter fast, so like an intermittent fasting, so that window is typically like 14 to 16 hours. For women, sometimes it's a little bit shorter just because our needs are a little bit different, especially during different times in our cycle.
Yeah.
But it can be really helpful because it's giving our body more time to rest and repair. So that's one of the big ones. You know, if you think about it, like a lot of us will be snacking at night, right? Like it's just like, you're like, oh, I'm not saying never snack at night again, guys. Like I'm not saying like you have to do this, but we're mindlessly snacking all the time. You know, we're watching, TV and we're just kind of eating. And then we wake up early and we eat as soon as we get up. That can be really hard on our digestive system. We're not really giving it that much time to just kind of chill out, right? So for people with digestive issues, especially like women with hormonal imbalances, it can be really helpful. People with like blood sugar, which is related to the hormone piece, people with blood sugar imbalances, again, that can be really helpful. Because again, like think about it, we're waking up, we're like eating like something sugary or like something processed, like a bagel and toast.
Cereal.
Yeah, cereal. We're like spiking our blood sugar. Our cortisol levels are also like shooting up in the morning. And then we like stop and then we may drink some coffee and not enough water. And then
so mean.
Right? And this is, again, I'm not judging. This is just, how life works. And then we have lunch and we're like starving, right? Maybe we push it a little bit too far. And then also we're like so tired after. So what we do, we're like, oh, well, look at that like sugary donut. Like I'm going to have this donut. And then we go through this like up and down and we're doing this all day, like from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. So we need to balance that blood sugar. So intermittent fasting can be really helpful for that because there's that period of time. And like, I know it sounds scary, but it's not as hard as people make it out to be.
Just don't eat.
Yeah. And it's not like you're not eating less I want to make that really clear. You're not
for sure. You're still eating. You're just constricting the food window.
You're actually eating the same amount of food, maybe not if you're like, because sometimes we don't need to actually snack at night. I mean, obviously if you're enjoying it and you're, having a movie night, that's one thing. So maybe you are actually eating less, but not in a negative way.
Yeah.
But like you're actually eating all of that food just in a condensed period of time. So like maybe you have your first meal at 11 and then maybe you still have a snack and then you're eating another meal at like, I don't know, like 2:33. And then maybe you need a snack, maybe you don't. Some people aren't snackers. And then you finish eating at like 7 p.m. And if you're worried about having the same caloric intakes, that's really important. Some people are like, yeah, I realized I actually didn't eat as much as usual when I'm intermittent fasting. Well, make sure you're like having things like elixirs that have like coconut oil in them just to make sure you're still getting all that healthy fat.
Calories,
You want to get those calories in. So it's not a diet that's meant to restrict. It's actually just changing when you're eating, essentially.
Speaking of restriction, what do you think about elimination diets?
Okay, so that in like the field of like digestive health is typically used to try to find food triggers.
So it's not something you want to stick on. It's just to figure out what's bothering you.
Yeah. So like things like food sensitivity tests can be quite expensive. They can be like upwards of $200 to $300, which isn't something that everyone has access to. If you do, then that might be nice just to kind of do without having to like do this elimination diet. But If you don't have that option, then essentially what you do is you take out main like food allergy like triggers, like things like nuts and eggs and peanuts and like you're not cutting out like meat. That's typically not an issue for people. Gluten, dairy. So essentially you take those foods out for a period of time, and then you slowly introduce one at a time, because you don't want to introduce more than one, because then you're not going to know. If you also need to have like it triggers you, you're not going to know which one it was. So you like introduce, let's say, eggs week 1, and then week 2, introduce like almonds. So you can see how it's like a pretty tedious diet to follow.
Takes a while.
Takes a long time. So it can be really frustrating for people. And that's why I'm like, I don't highly recommend it, because it can then just, people are like, oh, I don't want to do this, I quit. So it's like all that hard work and you're like, okay, well, that was kind of useless. So
what do you think about then fecal testing?
Okay, I don't know a ton about that, so I can't speak to it.
Okay.
But I'm intrigued by it. Like, do you mean like that, like fecal, like transplant?
Yeah, no.
Oh, like that.
Like,
okay, that's a new.
You can go to your. I've heard about that.
Yeah,
I'm real curious about that.
Yeah,
Actually, there's a lot of really good results that I've read about fecal transplants.
And like people with like autism and stuff is what I've seen.
I've never like them getting autism or curing autism.
No, like treating someone with autism.
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating though. I'm gonna have to look into that.
So do you mean like stool tests?
Yeah, stool tests. Yeah.
Oh, stool tests
like
are great.
Go to your doctor and like, here's some of my poop, man. If you want to hang out with this, and they check it and say, oh my God, so you've got worms.
Yeah.
or whatever.
Hey, no, honestly,
There's something. Yeah, parasites. I'm gonna write that
Parasites, yes. Okay, so stool tests are great. So like if you are experiencing, here's another thing though with like Western medicine. Again, I'm not someone who like bashes that there's like a time and place for it 100%. But I even went to my doctor while I was going through that like uncertainty with my cancer diagnosis, and my IBS symptoms flared up the worst they had since I was like probably like in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured it was from stress. Like I know my body pretty well, but I also am going through a weird time, so I should probably get it checked out. My doctor literally says, yeah, the only reason why I'm going to do these ultrasounds and testing is because you have cancer. Otherwise, I wouldn't really be worried. I had like extreme cramping, like couldn't like function during the day. I was like, oh, okay, noted. So
the only reason is because you have cancer, not because you're uncomfortable and crampy.
Yeah, literally.
That's so screwed up, man.
I know. So I mean, like not every doctor is going to be like that. So if you do think you need stool testing, like, and your doctor says no, I tell people to go to like walk-in clinics and just be like really dramatic and be like, I need a stool sample. It can be enlightening because it can tell you different things, but there's only so much it can tell you. There's another really amazing test that you can get called a GI map, which a lot of naturopathic doctors offer. It's super expensive, but it is like pages of information. It tests for more like parasites, bad bacteria, also good bacteria, which can be helpful. So like maybe you don't have a ton of bad bacteria, but you also don't have a ton of good bacteria.
Well, antibiotics wipe out all of it.
Yeah.
So that could be the case for many people.
For sure. So yeah, it's called a GI map. I've had it done before. It's a stool sample that you send away and they send you the results back. And yeah, like you can get, I think at most like naturopathic doctor offices, but it's like super enlightening. So I'm like nerding and I was like, you should really get it done. Just go like analyze your poop. Even if you don't feel like it, just do it.
I would like to get it done.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
Yeah. So I think those are really important if you're trying to figure out like what's going on in your body. Also blood testing, because sometimes it might not just be digestive like related. Your symptoms could be related to like a hormone imbalance, whether it's like your reproductive hormones or your thyroid. So I'm like, get all the testing done that your doctor will allow.
Do it all.
Do it all.
And parasites.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because from what I understand, everybody without question has some type of parasite.
Yeah.
We are a macrobiome on every level. And parasites are not always bad from what I understand, in that like they're not always going to like hinder you,
right,
health-wise.
Yes.
But you tell me what you think.
Yeah, like I know the word parasite sounds you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to go to the doctors right now. But no, don't worry. Like, I mean, you have to think about it. We're exposed to like so much with like food, right? That could be contaminated. Like think about like all the people like touching the food, even if you're like washing it. Like when you're in like public places, like it's just the world that we're in. Traveling, oh my gosh, traveling, like
traveler's diarrhea.
Yeah, like literally, like if you're traveling pretty much anywhere like tropical or like abroad, like you're probably going to be exposed to that to some extent. Not to scare you. Okay, it's fine. But yeah, like it's also not uncommon to have parasites. So people like get really like scared and embarrassed that they might have like a parasite. But again, like if you were traveling somewhere and eating different foods that might have not been cooked in a super clean space, you might have been exposed, and that's fine. Like there's things that you can do, and sometimes it honestly does take antibiotics. I know I'm like pro like gut health, but like that's again, Western medicine does play a role. There are natural ways of doing it. Like you could go to a naturopathic doctor who has like parasite protocols. Depending on like how severe it is, you might actually just need to like knock it out, if that makes sense. But again, it can be really hard to tell if you like have them for a couple reasons. One, the symptoms typically overlap with like other things. So there's like the obvious symptoms, like you might come back from vacation and have like, you know, traveler's diarrhea and like maybe you vomited and like all of these things.
Oh, it's all good. I just wanted to make it. You're good. You're good where you are.
But like that's a little bit more obvious, but you might also have like, again, like the gassiness, the bloating, like maybe changes in your bowel movement. You might not even see parasites when you look at your like own poop, right? Yeah, you're like analyzing it every day.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one. Yeah. You guys do too. I check because I'm like, I want to know if there's parasites. Like, can I see little thingies swimming around?
But you might not.
All the time. No.
So that's the thing is like you could actually have a parasite, and because a lot of them will like stay in your digestive tract. Some of them, if you go to your doctor, again, that's why just getting a stool test from your doctor might not give you all the results you need, because it does test for some parasites, but not all of them. There's so many different ones. There's so many. Even the GI map, it tests for a lot more. But even then, there still could be ones outside of that one that you have. So like, don't get too discouraged. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you ruled out like that you don't have leaky gut and you don't have like candida and you don't have IBS and you're still experiencing these things, that's when like you really, I think, need to push for more support from like your naturopathic doctor or your medical doctor. But yeah.
What do you think about a colonoscopy then?
Those I think are typically reserved for people that are experiencing like quite severe.
Or maybe that's the wrong term. I know there's a place you can go to and they stick like a hose in your butt.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what that's called.
I'm having like a brain fart right now. It's not a colonoscopy. No, that's all I can think of.
Colonoscopy, yeah.
It's
colon cleanse.
It's like it is a colon cleanse, but I can't remember the name for it.
I can't remember, but like they fill you up with water and then all of your stuff just floats out.
Yeah.
And they said that you can see like 4-foot long tapeworms just flowing out of people's butts, and like once a week they see these things coming out, indicating that most of us have something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, not to like scare
not to scare anybody.
It's funny because like I talk about poop all the time, but even that stuff I'm like, ooh, like
oh my god, if you were having that done and because it's all see-through tubes and you can see everything coming at you and you see like this big worm, you're like,
I would not be able to watch.
I couldn't sleep with myself at night.
Yeah.
Like, you're so dirty.
And that's the thing, right? It's like you think you've done something wrong, but you probably haven't. Like that's just is what it is. Like kids are really prone to them because they're like literally eating dirt and stuff, which is also good for you to like, you know, be outside. Dirt. Yeah. Like
there's this book that I was looking at when I was doing research for this. It's called Eat Dirt. And I was like, that's a really intriguing title. And so I read like
for breakfast, you're eating like a bowl of dirt.
Honestly, but this guy was like, you need to have like, so potatoes and carrots and stuff, they say wash it to get all the pesticides off and stuff. And it's like, it's cooked in, or it's grown in poops. Like that's bad. But the guy's saying like, that's how we get a diverse microbiome. Kids are eating sand, eating dirt, and that's contributing to their microbiome, because if the immune system doesn't have anything to fight against, we're kind of weak to everything. And that's, we've seen with the kind of in the era we grew up and like our parents where they just like super Lysol everything.
Yes.
You know, and the soaps that we're using are killing the microbiome on our hands. And it's like, we're kind of realizing now that like we went a little too far.
Yes.
In terms of sterilizing everything and living in a bubble. And now people are getting these sicknesses in addition to all the crap in our foods.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's a thing. And like, you have to think like most, like our parents grew up like, well, okay, mine are like an exception because they grew up like in small towns, or like my dad like grew up on a farm, but like that was like their life, right? Like but like they didn't grow up with like gut health issues. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't have like sensitivities to like every food that they looked at, which I also find very interesting. My mom was never like one of those moms that was like super like, you know, germ freak like growing up. Like we also would play outside and roll in the dirt or whatever. But even then, like we were eating a lot of like the 90s, right? Like I was eating like Dunkaroos and like Joe Louis. Oh my gosh.
Don't start.
Honestly, if you put a Joe Louis in front of me, I would eat it with no shame.
I haven't had Dunkaroos in 15 years, man.
Oh my gosh. Like they're the best.
When you come back in, we'll have Dunkaroos.
Okay. Like I honestly would. So I think that was a little bit of it. But like, it's funny because I was really like, I'm still not super good about it. I'm like a little bit of like a germ freak in some ways. Like I'm so scared that I'm going to get like food poisoning from like meat splatter on like my counter. And I'm like trying not to like be so, well, obviously if there is actually like meat splatter, I'm going to clean that up. Like that is really dangerous. Let me just say that.
Right.
But like growing up, like I wanted to like be the person that was like sanitizing things and like sanitizing my hands.
Oh yeah.
So I stopped using like, I only bring like hand sanitizer now if I'm like going to like an airport or something where it's like
super germy,
super questionable. But I used to use it all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so bad for your like gut health. Yeah. Like your,
and it's absorbed through your skin as well.
Your skin microbiome, like everything. It's like, but it's so hard not to sometimes because I'm like, ew, people are gross.
You know, 1 in 9 eggs that you eat has salmonella in it that wasn't killed by cooking it.
And it's usually on the outside too, I've heard, like on the actual shell.
On the shell? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew it was like within the egg.
Okay.
Like the yolk and the whites and stuff like that. Like 1 in 9 eggs that you eat has active salmonella bacteria in it.
Right.
Even if it's fully cooked and you eat that.
Yeah.
You know, and so we were always freaking out about like meat and stuff and getting salmonella. But it's like, we have an immune system for a reason.
Yes.
And 1 in 9 eggs you eat has salmonella. So you got to have faith in your body's ability to be a body.
Yes. And I think that's why it's even, again, I know I've said this 100 times, but like focus on that gut health because you need that healthy bacteria and you need your stomach, you know, like you need that acid in your stomach to break down food and all those other important functions to fight off things that like, you know, you might wash your hands and you might clean your vegetables and you might cook your food well. But like, I mean, you're going to be exposed to these things all the time. So if your gut health isn't really up to par, then you might be more prone to get sick. Yeah.
I want to ask you about, are there any advancements that you think should be made in your field? Any like, preconceptions or beliefs within like the professionals in the field that's kind of holding them back from adapting their techniques? Or are there is there anywhere within the nutrition field where we need to move forward?
Right. It depends on like what like professional you're talking about. So, and I'm not going to say one's like better than the other. I'm not going to like start a fight here on this podcast, but there's holistic nutritionists like myself, and then there's registered dietitians, and both play really important roles. I have friends who took the more like traditional nutrition route, and that's really important. They work in, you know, long-term care homes and hospitals, and they have to have really precise measurements for people's like food and like, because they might be like severely diabetic and all of that, right? Like there's, that's really important. I would not be able to do that for someone. But I've also had clients who've gone to like dietitians, and I know this is not all of them. I just want to stress that. I know some of them are amazing and like take a holistic view, but they've gone in with their husband and their husband had diabetes, and they said, well, you just need to switch from regular Coke to Diet Coke. And it's like,
I've seen that.
Or how about just like not drink Coke?
Drink water.
How about just maybe mix in a water every once in a while? And again, like not all of them are like that. Some of them actually even take holistic nutrition schooling after their like intense university schooling. But I think there needs to be more of that holistic approach. On the holistic nutrition side of things, it can vary so much because a lot of us niche down into different like areas. Like I focus on digestive health, where some focus on hormones, like maybe just fertility, even within hormones. Like so we all have our different kind of ways of practicing nutrition. One thing that I think is really important is to kind of be a little bit more balanced in our approach. I think there's a time and place to put someone on a stricter protocol where, like let's say they come to me and they have like an actual like gut infection of some sort. We need to like, exclude some of these foods for a period of time, get you on some supplements. But like life is too short to like only eat spinach and like broccoli and like plain baked chicken for the rest of your life. I think it's getting a little bit better, but I've seen so many people in the health and wellness industry and in the nutrition industry like push, it almost seems like a diet culture, and I don't think they're realizing it. It's like, well, this is what I eat in a day. Like, and I've been guilty of that when I first started. I'm like, here's what I eat in a day. It's like, no one cares what I eat in a day. Also, like that might not work for the next person. So yeah, I think it's really important that we focus on like also living our lives, creating that balance so we don't create like a negative relationship with food, which I see a lot with the clients that I see, and they don't even realize they have a negative relationship with food. So yeah, that holistic approach, but also just being realistic about it and not being so like strict about like the whole clean eating, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You mentioned, rather you insinuated that just eating like spinach and chicken breast and vegetables and stuff for like every meal would be healthy. What about the micronutrients there? Because that seems like you're just hitting your macros.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's the thing. And like, I always tell people the classic like Instagram, and I'm not like trying to speak negatively about these people. They're trying to promote like wellness. Maybe they're not like trained in it. But you see they're like, here's my meal prep Sunday. And it's like 5 containers of just chicken, broccoli, and like rice. That's great. Maybe like for dinner one night and maybe lunch the next day, like once a week. But you want to switch it up, because if you're just eating the same things, you're just getting the same nutrients all the time. I'm not saying chicken's bad. I'm not saying broccoli's bad. I'm not saying rice is bad. But again, like you said, the micronutrients, you want to get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. Like the different colors in fruits and vegetables have different nutrients, right? So if you're just eating really bland looking food all the time, you're probably just going to be getting the same nutrients. Like you want to eat foods that are like high in antioxidants, like blueberries, right? So should we prioritize those micronutrient rich foods then? Like blueberries every day? Not necessarily.
Or within a week, like once a week, or...
I honestly think it depends. People get really stressed out about like, the macros and the micro like nutrients and making sure they're getting like a certain amount. I tell people just eat a variety of foods. So when you're going to the grocery store, like try to get a little bit of everything. And you don't have to eat like a carton of blueberries every day. Like maybe it's just, you have a few blueberries on like your yogurt, or maybe like you're getting it in the form of frozen blueberries or frozen fruit in a smoothie, right? So don't try to overcomplicate it and be like, okay, so this meal I have 1 antioxidant, I have my protein, I had like just... That's
where I was heading. I was going to ask like, so how can we eat the same thing every day and get everything that we need?
Yeah. No, I don't get too stressed out about it. Okay. It's all just like about balance and also listening to what your body needs. If you listen, it'll tell you what it needs. Like it's crazy. And it's a skill. Like don't just think like tomorrow you're going to be like, wow, I know what my body needs. Like this took me years of like practice to be like, you know what? I really need like red meat. Like my body needs it tonight. So I'm going to have it. Whereas like some nights I'm like, my body needs like chickpeas and like a salad. Just tune in to what it needs. Again, that's a practice.
That's interesting. It's happened to me once.
Okay.
It was totally random. And Jess and I were just hanging out, and just like every cell in my body was like, I want to eat an avocado. And I've never had an avocado before at this point.
Yeah.
And I was like, can we get guac?
Yeah.
And so we went out and we had some guac, And it was the best thing that it just felt like it filled a hole in my soul.
Yeah.
And ever since I've had like an avocado every day since then.
It's like maybe you just need some fat,
yeah,
right?
I think that was it. All I was eating was chicken breast, broccoli, and rice. And there's no fats in that really.
Okay, and that's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that was at the end of my like bodybuilding phase. And so all I was eating was the bodybuilding meals. And
right.
So how would you recommend somebody starts to get in tune with what their body needs?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because that happened randomly to me, and I don't think that I could bring it about on purpose.
Yeah. Before you just like go in and just start like rushing to make dinner or like lunch or breakfast, like literally just pause and be like literally, I know it sounds like super corny and I'm not a corny person. So like I get it can be like really uncomfortable. And you have to do this out loud. Like don't stand in front of your friends and be like, what do I want today? But you can honestly just ask yourself like what does my body need? And just like see if like what's like the first thing that pops in your mind. Okay, if it's a bag of chips, like that's probably more of a craving than like an intuitive like need. Not saying chips are bad, like enjoy them in moderation. But yeah, like maybe your body's like, I need eggs this morning. Like I really need some protein. You know? Also think about it too, like what are you doing that day? Like are you gonna like go work out right at like are you doing a hard workout or did you just do a hard workout? Like your body's probably gonna want something a little bit more substantial. Again, like before dinner, instead of just being like, oh, I'm just gonna rush and make this, like maybe you're like, oh, I just really need something warm and comforting. So maybe I'm gonna have something a little bit more heavy in the carbohydrates and the starches. So I'm gonna have like pasta, right? Or like maybe I'm just feeling a little like heavy today. You know, I've kind of felt a little off. So maybe I just need something a little bit lighter. And you know what? If you have something a little bit lighter and you find that you need a little bit more, then eat more. But just give your body that time to actually recognize that instead of just like shoving it. That's, again, it goes back to that mindful eating as well.
Yeah. And speaking of mindful eating, do you think people should count calories or just eat? Just eat.
I am someone who does not like the whole calorie counting thing because not all calories aren't created equally. So, I mean, like things like coconut oil and avocado are super healthy for you, right? But if you like were eating those regularly and you looked at the calorie count and you'd be like, okay, cool. So I guess I'll just...
There's 600 calories there.
Yeah, I guess I'll just not
eat dinner today.
Not have dinner, right? Which is such a dangerous way to look at it. Our body metabolizes those fats differently than like, you know, fried food and chips and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. Again, it's listening to your body. And I know this is a really hard thing to do because, you know, a lot of us have like blood sugar imbalances and we just eat when we want, what we want. So the hormones that tell us that we're full or hungry might not be working properly. So you really have to get in tune and be like, you're eating your meal, you're eating slowly. That's when you're going to be like, oh, actually I'm full. Like I don't actually need to eat everything on my plate, right? Or you are so in tune that you eat more and you're like, wait a little bit and you're like, no, actually I'm still hungry. So I am going to have a little bit more and not have guilt around that. Yeah, so don't count calories.
Don't count calories.
Yeah, just listen to your body if it's full or not. Make sure you're getting those healthy fats, those healthy sources of protein, healthy sources of carbohydrates. Don't be scared of them. Like they're not the devil, okay? Like have them if your body needs them.
If you feel hungry throughout the day, should you eat or should you wait a little bit? Because I understand that ghrelin is the hormone that makes you want to eat, but after like 5 minutes, it if you don't eat something within 5 minutes, like the ghrelin just kind of stops being produced because it's like, okay, well, we're not getting any food, so we're gonna just wait on that. So one thing I tell clients, because some people just like eat based off like emotion, right? That's also an issue, or they're dehydrated. So sometimes you might actually think you're hungry, but you just need to drink water, which is really interesting. So if you're like, I shouldn't be hungry because like I had a meal like recently, try drinking water, wait about like 10, 15 minutes and see if you're actually still hungry. I'm not saying like live off of water. This isn't like a water like faster. Yeah. I want to make that really clear, but be like, okay, no, I was actually just really dehydrated. I just needed water because it can get mixed up, which is interesting. So would that mean that dehydration triggers ghrelin?
I'm not super sure on like the like science behind it, but it is like, yeah, Guys are like, I need to drink some water now.
Honestly, I realized. So I've been, just a sideline here, like I've been trying to drink a lot more water actively. And it's really, really hard because I don't think that I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
I just exist.
Yeah.
You know? But as I'm forcing myself to drink more water, I am so much more thirsty now than I was like a week ago or whatever. And
it's like your body's like waking up. It's like, whoa,
what is this goodness?
What
Give
is
me
this
some
hydration?
more of that. Yeah. What do you want to learn? Because like we're lifelong learners. And so where would you like to take your education in?
Oh my gosh. This is a good question because I've been nerding out like crazy lately on this hormone testing, which I won't like get. I'm hoping to offer it in the next like 2 to 3 months maybe. But what it is, it's basically a dried urine sample, which you can do at home.
What's that, sorry?
A dried urine sample. So it's like
sample.
a piece of paper that you basically pee on. For females, you have to do it a certain time in your cycle. Usually days like, I think it's 19 to 21 in your cycle. So hopefully you're familiar enough with it. And you pee on these 4 pieces of paper at different times over a 24-hour period of time. And it tells you so much amazing information. It tells you like your estrogen levels. And like, I know you can get like your like serum tests, like blood tests for like estrogen, progesterone, but these actually show you how you metabolize these estrogens and like how they're detoxed. So are they being detoxed down a good pathway in your body and out, you know, like, do you have good bowel movements and that excess estrogen's actually being excreted, or is it being recirculated in your body? It tells you your cortisol levels and like what levels they are at different times of the day. So are you like really high at certain times and really low? It tells you like your testosterone and your DHEA, which is really helpful for females, especially if they have like PCOS symptoms. So if they're like, might have hair thinning, maybe but hair growth in like other places, like on their face that they don't want, low libido, weight gain, like fatigue, acne. This test might kind of shed some light on that because it might show them that they're favoring high androgen, so like more like the testosterone and things like that. So it's like, that's good for someone like myself. It's like, okay, so like now we actually know what's going on in your body. It doesn't tell you this. Progesterone needs to be done through blood samples, if that makes sense, but it can show you how progesterone's metabolized, which is pretty accurate to like the blood test. So that can be helpful, especially for females who might be experiencing like irregular like periods and things like that. I'm sorry, I'm like getting carried away. I'm like so excited.
I'm really interested about that.
It's so cool. I did it on myself and I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, so cortisol, a little crazy here, so need to manage that. So it can be really enlightening because I kind of figured that was going to be high.
Are you a high stress person?
I am a high stress person. I'm working on it because I know it's really bad. But yeah, the test was really interesting. So I've been doing a ton of research on that so that I can really familiarize myself with how it works. Because if you actually see what the test looks like and the results, it can be like, what the heck am I looking at? It also tests for other things like certain vitamin levels, which might be associated with hormone imbalances. So that's something that I'm nerding out on lately. So stay tuned because I'm hoping to offer that in the next few months.
What are the requirements for you being able to incorporate that into your practice?
You have to be like a certified like nutritionist or dietitian or like naturopathic doctor. So you can't just sign up and be like, yes, I'd like
I'm doing it now.
I actually think you could technically order it yourself to like do the test, but like to actually be a practitioner who like analyzes the results, you have to. And the company also gives you like training with like their doctors to like go through like the tests and stuff. So I've been doing like case studies and like, I mean, I probably could do it now, but I'm someone that like wants to be super thorough.
You're reading case studies. I'm interested. Are there any peculiar cases that you've come across or
with like this testing?
Yeah.
So because I'm pretty fresh into it, they've been like pretty like standard. So like women that might have like high androgens or might, have like PCOS related symptoms. Women that might have excess estrogen is like super common. Sometimes they actually have like really high estrogen, like there's E1, E2, E3. So they might have like high in a couple, but like low in one of them. Like I had a really low estrogen, like E3, which was like pretty much like in like the postmenopausal like range. I was like, well, that's neat, which is like really good to know at this age because it can also like lead to things like osteoporosis down the line. So I was like, oh, dang. One thing that I found interesting, so I can't like speak too much to it, is the male side of it. So there's like one you can get specifically if you are a male because it's a little bit different. So I really want to learn more about that because I'm not super familiar because I always work with women.
Women, yeah.
So like for me looking at like a male test, I'm like, whoa, what's happening? Like, you know what I mean? And they like still get tested for things like estrogen. So like maybe they actually do have like really high estrogen and that could, be leading to symptoms.
I've read about that because there's anything that's processed or packaged has estrogen in it to, I don't know how it works, just to package it more. Yeah, like canned food has estrogen in it.
Yeah.
And so the result of all this estrogen in everybody's diets, girls are developing earlier and boys are developing later.
Yeah.
And that's an effect of like all the estrogen in our food. And so they're talking about how when blood tests are done on men, like the standard deviation has changed a little bit. Like the standard level of estrogen or a hormone balance in men has changed because of what we've been doing to our bodies.
Yeah. And I know like people make jokes and make fun of men, but like it can produce like breasts in males,
boobs, yeah.
right? And it can like lead to like weight gain and things like that. And it might not even be super obvious. It might just be like, oh, like, you hear guys making fun of like friends and like, oh, like, they have like man boobs and because they are gaining weight, but actually could maybe be from like a hormone imbalance. Right? And also there's things called xenoestrogens. So they're mimic estrogen, which is really dangerous in our body. And we get them from like personal care products and like that we're putting on our face and our arms, right? Again, right? So like I actually just did a post this morning, funny enough, like talking about different toxins that are in personal care products, but some of them do have these xenoestrogens and that just adds to that estrogen toxic load. And that can be like males, you could be using products that are also overburdening like your liver and your digestive system. Because again, it comes back to that digestive piece. So if you're don't have good gut health, you're not getting rid of that excess estrogen. It's just getting reabsorbed into your system, which is like what causes these symptoms.
It makes me curious about makeup because if like stuff's absorbing into your skin, how is that affecting the development of the microbiome?
Oh,
because I remember when we were younger, like going through elementary school, like kids look different now because like kids now are wearing makeup in elementary school, which
they look older than me. I'm like, what the heck is happening?
I feel like such an old man now because I'm like, kids these days are all
I'm like not even that old. Oh my God, they're so
I know. It's so weird, but like things are changing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other topic. It's like I'm curious about how now that I know that makeup is being absorbed through the skin, like in addition to all the processed food that we're seeing, like how is like say girls wearing makeup younger and younger affecting the development of the microbiome, or if at all?
Yeah, I mean, like I can't like really say for sure, right? I don't know, but I would suspect that it would be detrimental because like that's a lot of work on your liver, right? It's like the chemicals from like all the stuff you're putting on your body, the cleaning products, the air that you're like breathing in, the medications that you're taking, even if it's Advil, right? Like it's just there's just so much that we're consuming every day, whether or not we realize it. So yeah, like I don't recommend really anyone to put toxic products on their body. So like, yeah, as like a young female that might be doing that, like that's a lot of years of toxic overload.
I have had a lot of fun chatting with you. The final thing that I want to add on here, if there are any other tips that you have for anybody to start improving their health now, or even how to go inward and start noticing when things are off, because going to see a nutritionist or a specialist costs money, and for the low budget people, what can they start doing to start figuring themselves out?
Okay. So actually funny you just said that, because I have a free resource that I have on my website now. And it is around gut health basics, but I have a gut health journal in there.
A gut health journal.
So you can download that and track how much water you're drinking. So of course, one of my tips is to drink more water. And also track your bowel movements, which I know might sound kind of weird, but I'm assuming a lot of people probably don't track it like you and I do. Yeah. So just even taking note of what they're especially, and also the food you're eating, not to be what food am I eating because I need to watch what I'm eating, more so to see if there's any correlation. You're oh, I drank a lot of beer this weekend and my bowel movements were really bad Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So just kind of becoming a little bit more aware. So if you don't really have those internal cues yet, because again, it takes time, writing things down can be helpful. How did you feel that day? Did you experience any digestive issues? What have you eaten the last few days? Did you also just not drink water? Are you constipated, but you also had no water and 5 coffees? Just things like that, right? So that's something you can do. I can even send you the link to that as well, so people can find it easily. Sleep, some people come to me, I'm really tired. I'm
Sleep.
You just paid me money to tell you to sleep. Some people just need that accountability, so there's nothing wrong with that. But sleep is so important for I could have a whole book about the things that it supports. I actually just had a podcast episode launch this past week with a sleep consultant. So she gives a lot of amazing free tips on the whole sleep thing for adults and kids. So I recommend you check that out, because that's her jam.
She in London?
Yeah, she's actually based in London.
Oh,
she's
cool.
Bedtime Beginnings is her business. Her name is Brooke Honadel. And she's a lovely human. And yeah, she gives a ton of free tips about sleep on that podcast. Stress management. After I told you that my cortisol levels were crazy. Actually, they were so low because my body was just why are we producing cortisol anymore? Clearly she's not going to listen. So we're just going to flatline on that.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Another question about those tests. Is that something that you would take, say, monthly or something, so you can get a longer data, some longevity in the data set? Or
well, I mean, if they were cheaper, I would say that'd be great if you could take them every month. But they're quite pricey.
What's the cost?
About $200 to get that done. But I mean, if you are suffering from a lot of these symptoms and you have no answers from your doctor and stuff, I mean, I think it's worth it if you can afford it.
Shouldn't it be free?
I know.
Shouldn't all of this be free?
Oh, I wish even for myself. This is coming from someone who also needs these tests, right? I wish I could have this done monthly. But even if you can get it done yearly, if you can make that into your budget, if you are someone that's experiencing pretty intense hormone imbalances, it might be good just to kind of check to make sure everything's okay. Yeah.
Cool. Well, how can everybody get in contact with you?
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Simply Nick Nutrition. And that's also the same for my website. You can send me a message if you ever have questions, if you want to just chat. I'm pretty easygoing. So, and you can tell I like nerding out about this stuff. So feel free to send me a message on any of those platforms. Send me an email if you want. And I would love to get to know you.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely push some people to your website.
Yeah.
And you have your own podcast.
I do. Yes. I just launched this past year. I had to think about that. I don't know what time of the year it is. Yeah. It's called the Random Wellness Podcast. And it's a mix of solo episodes, conversational ones with my friend Avery from Mind Moves, and then interviews from other health and wellness professionals and even other business owners. So yeah.
That's cool. I'll give that a listen.
Yeah, you can find it on my website too. So
cool.
Yeah.
I'll check that out. Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
This has been People of Passion. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Nicole for making it in. Check out Nicole on social media, and if you found value in this episode, please share it with others to help us grow. Follow us for future episodes, and as always, follow your passions. Thanks so much.